this group is to strengthen and expand the county's SUD, OUD behavioral health system to provide prevention, treatment, and recovery services that enhance our residents' ability to access in-county treatment and move forward to their recovery and wellness. So that's the purpose of this group. And the discussion that we're going to have today ultimately will land looking through the lens of that mission. But we got a little bit to go through before we get to that part of it. So I thought, again, as we're all introducing ourselves, if you could just quickly say what it is that motivates you to be at this table, to bring your talent and expertise here. And I'll start. You all know I'm Lori Fleming. And I should mention that John Nowak, who's usually here with me, the co-executive director here at Community Health Improvement Plan, his mom passed away this week, so he isn't able to be here today. But I know all of our, several of you have reached out, and our thoughts are with him. So the thing that I think brings me to this table, or that motivates me to be here, is I know I bring a real talent at taking a bunch of disparate pieces and weaving them together into a cohesive solution. And it seems like whatever it is you call it, providential, or I landed at this table through an unusual pathway, would never have expected to be here 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I feel like I'm supposed to bring that talent that I have to this particular table. And so now I'm going to pass it on to, how about Vicki Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Lori. As most of you know, I'm Vicki Kirkpatrick, Director, Jefferson County Public Health. And from a public health perspective, there is finally recognition that you can't separate what is happening to a person in a person's head, whether it's addiction or mental illness, from the rest of the body and expect to be able to achieve wellness. There really needs to be a holistic approach. And I am grateful that there is growing recognition of the importance of that. And also the importance of the ancillary wraparound kinds of things, such as housing and access to, an income and educational opportunities and those kinds of things, the social determinants of health that are also very important to health and wellness. And I see both CHIP and the Behavioral Health Consortium as being able to identify and speak to all of the things that impact a person's mental health as well as their addiction, and identify the gaps and help forge a system that knows and is aware of the activities that are going on in the community, and then able to reflect that back to the community, along with the understanding and identification of the gaps that remain. So that's my interest in including or being a part of this effort.
Thank you, Vicki. How about Jim Novelli?
You would ask me next. So, well, this is what I do for a living. It's what I've done for going on 30 years, 25 years, working with behavioral health, working with mental health, both at the community level, both at the state level, and back at the community level again. What drives me is helping people that have mental illness or substance use disorders, personal, driven by family members that have had those issues. So it's always been a commitment. It's something I didn't think I would do years ago when I started out, actually as an archaeologist for many years, but ended up in community mental health. But what drives me as this community is when I moved out here, I was really just impressed by this consortium and the groups of people that can come together and work on things together. And it's, I think I've landed in the right spot to really grow behavioral health and find partners in this process. I know I've talked to you recently. I don't know if I can mention real quickly that DBH is in the process of exploring a community development block grant to look at building a supportive therapeutic residential facility. And I think this would be a big, big plus for this community. It's something that I've been here for a year now, and I've heard the need for this. And this is a facility that I used to run over on the other side of the mountains, but I can talk later in more detail about it. But it provides basically crisis, it provides emergency beds, transitional housing, and people to be part of this process have to be engaged in services. And when we had this facility where I was before, it also helped with the drug court. People starting out in drug court would start out there for a month or so to get their grounding. But this is something I think that could fit the community needs. It was very successful in Omak, Washington, where it's a very small community. I think I can replicate that again. And I'd like to see that happen in this community. So I'm really excited to bring that stuff forward. And that's my commitment to my remaining years of work to the community. This is just exploring. I don't know, we got a long way to go, but we're gonna take a look at it. So.
All right. Ford Kessler?
Yeah, what motivates me is I grew up in addiction. Became part of that lifestyle. My kids are part of that lifestyle. I've watched many different people try to fix alcoholics and addicts, and I've been in this business for 40 years, and I'm dedicated to helping alcoholics and addicts get better. I have been since I started in this business, and I continue to participate in that. I'm getting ready. Most of you have heard rumors. I'm getting ready to retire. That's real. I will be in the community working with people in recovery on a personal issue, but in the process, DHR and Safe Harbor Recovery Center are going to be joining forces and becoming a team, and that will be something that makes this process a lot stronger. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Chief McKern.
Well, you should never talk to a county commissioner because then they're going to put you to work. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. No, I have a passion for this. I lost a son, and so this is a huge passion for me. And if we can save one life, and I'm happy to report Cool Scene Fire actually did save one in the last week with the use of Narcan. Happens every single day. And if we can save that one life, if we can give them the resources that I'm looking around and I'm seeing pictures and I'm hearing all of you, and if we can get those resource information to the right people, to the right place, and we can save a life, then we've done what we need to do. But it's all about prevention and education and getting the right tools. I can tell you from the mental health perspective, I know the sheriff will echo this because he and I are usually on the same meetings, and will echo that our mental health issue is becoming a true pandemic. It's becoming just as bad as COVID is that we've got to do something. We need to do something pretty quick. I was on a meeting an hour ago, and Kitsap County is trying to figure out what to do with the old Kitsap Hospital, and guess what? They're going to turn it into a center because they have found the need is there. So that's my kind of my soapbox, if you will. And Greg, thanks for hitting the notch, for throwing me on the committee. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. How about Patrick Johnson?
Yes. Well, I'm not a clinician, but I've been at this for a long time. And like many of you, I had a twin brother that shot himself 20 years ago, and a mother that was in and out of a state mental institution back in the days when it was pretty barbaric, and seen a lot of destruction over the years. And so I've stayed with this even after I retired. So I'm very glad to be here with all of you who are working so hard.
Thank you. Cherish Cronmiller? I'm sorry, Cherish, I did that to you justice.
I was prepared. Hi, everyone. I'm Cherish Cronmiller. I'm the Executive Director of Olympic Community Action Programs, the community action agency for Clallam and Jefferson counties. you know, I'm committed to community action work. I'm also a licensed attorney. So, you know, my passion sort of started in understanding how justice issues perpetuate the cycle of poverty and issues with the low income and working class population. So that coupled with, you know, the incarceration of the population that has, you know, mental health or comorbidity going on. Yeah, you know, a number of our customers have one issue or another. There's usually, you know, something that is keeping them from reaching self-sufficiency. And often it files into this realm. So I find it incumbent upon our agency to ensure that, you know, we're focused on keeping people having the basic necessities of, you know, housing and utilities and food, and meeting that baseline that everyone should have, you know, in this century in the United States of America. So, you know, that's big to me. As someone, I suffer from panic disorder and major depressive disorder. So, you know, I've dealt with this personally through my life, and I can only imagine, you know, I'm a pretty capable person. So when I think of other folks trying to navigate the system, I don't know how they manage, because I barely can navigate the system and deal with stuff sometimes. So, you know, so I really empathize with the folks that deal with this. And then overall, you know, the numbers, we've got to produce the numbers, because unfortunately, if you don't work in this realm, you don't know this realm, people, they have to hear the stories and they have to see the numbers to better understand or feel like our work is justified. And so that's where I think it's also critical that, you know, unfortunately, people do become numbers, and we have to provide that data in order to make sure that we have the dollars necessary in our community. So
Thank you, Cherish. So for those of you that joined a little bit after, we took a look at our mission statement, and then, and I'm going to read it again just because several have jumped on since then. The mission statement is to strengthen and expand the county's SUD/OUD behavioral health system to provide prevention, treatment, and recovery services that enhance our residents' ability to access in-county treatment and move forward to recovery and wellness. So with that in mind, I've asked people as they're introducing themselves to say, what motivates you to be at this table? And I mean it kind of from a heart place, you know, why are you bothering to spend your time at this table? Because we know that your time is important and there are a lot of places you could put it. So now I'm going to go to Lisa Thomas.
Hey everybody, Lisa Ray Thomas, and I'm with the University of Washington Addictions Drug and Alcohol Institute. And although I don't live in Jefferson County, I got to know and joined this group, got to know all of you and joined this group when I was with the Olympic Community of Health coordinating the 3-county coordinated opioid response project. And what motivates me and my passion is connecting people. So originally it was Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap County, and now in my role at ADAI, I'm excited to connect all of you statewide to people doing the same work. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. How about Sheriff Knoll?
Hello, everyone. Joe Knoll here, Jefferson County Sheriff. And I'll be the one truthful person here. I know people are too scared, but I'm in this for the money. And I think a lot of you probably would admit that as well. But all kidding aside, that's a loaded question there, Lori. You know, believe it or not, I got into law enforcement to help people. And I think it goes back to, I remember when I was little and my mom told me something to the effect of, we all piss in the same pot. And excuse my French, but and for some reason what that meant to me was that we're all equal and we all deserve to be treated the same and all those kinds of things. And that's just really stuck with me. And I think, you know, I've been in law enforcement now for 27 years here in the county, and just all that, like a lot of people here, all the stuff that we've seen and been exposed to and seen people's lives that you know, if you asked them, they wouldn't want to be that way. They didn't set out to be that way. Some people have no choice over how they are. But, you know, anything that we can do to help, and especially now being the sheriff, like, you know, I'm able to make decisions on things to make things better in people's lives. So I think that, you know, that's what motivates me, is I think is just my general feelings about others and all the nastiness I've seen. So.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Dave Fortino? Is it the money?
No, because I don't actually see any of this money, so that doesn't really motivate me as much as, but that's not to discount the fact that that's what gets things done around here. So I will appreciate that fact. No, I've been doing this job for 16 years. When I got into law enforcement, similar to the sheriff, I wanted to do good for the community, right? And I thought working in a jail, I house all the bad people. But it was over time that I realized, well, they're not necessarily as, I mean, their mental health and their substance use got them there, and I see people at their rock bottom. And it was over time that I've learned that the work that I do here sometimes helps people. And I'm now in a position where I can do quite a bit more help, and I can influence that quite a bit more. And so I'm here to help influence. And if that's to help us get money, then I'm happy to do that as well.
Well, I'm really glad you're here on this team. How about Matt? And Matt, I'm just going to go ask people outside my door to be quiet.
Okay. So hi, I'm Matt Reddy. I'm one of the hospital commissioners, and of course I'm getting a phone call right now. So let's go to somebody else because I have to take this call. Sorry about that.
How about Peggy Webster?
Well, as a mutual friend put it, I'm a mom with a mission. I have a son who has battled addiction and mental illness issues for 20 years. In fact, the reason I'm here is he's here. And we had a crisis about 16, 17 months ago. And like Chair said, I think I pretty much can figure out how to get to things. And I couldn't figure out how to get help. And so I would like to see it. And I'd like to bring my background and expertise in housing to help for things like Jim Novelli's idea with going for CDBG for some recovery housing.
Thank you. It's good to have you here. How about Chief Black?
Sorry, you caught me doing three things at once.
All right.
So I think there's two reasons for me. I think one is kind of to echo what Sheriff Knoll said. It's within our wheelhouse. It's something we deal with on a regular basis, and I like to know what I don't know and see if there's new ways that we can be efficient and effective to impact the community. But on a personal and professional note, I think I'm intrigued with both mental health and substance abuse as it relates to public safety. I've been way too close to way too many events with coworkers. So if anything, if I could steal some wisdom just to use for that, I think it's a win for me at least.
Well, it's good to have you here.
You bet.
How about Mel Melmid?
Hi there, Mel Melmed, Olympic Community of Health. And there are so many reasons that I'm in this work. I'm a public health nurse. I really love prevention and trying to help people so that you never see them. But as a nurse who's also done direct service, and just as a friend who's lost people to suicide and substance abuse, and with a long family history of substance abuse, it's also very personal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mel. How about Adam York?
Hi. So I'm here because I love the challenge of healthcare data and helping a team use it to solve or figure out a problem or identify something, use it. And also the cause itself, I think I've lost every single friend I had in my childhood in one way or another to mental health or drugs or something. So I know this is a very serious and hard to understand topic. So just, it's an endless challenge. It requires teams like this to figure it out. So.
Well, this team is lucky to have you on it. How about Denise Baker?
Hi, I'm Denise Banker. I'm the Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative Coordinator for Jefferson County. And what that means is I do alcohol, tobacco, and other drug prevention at the community level and in the school districts. And thanks, Adam, for saying that this is a really, really difficult issue to understand. And I think that quite often prevention is the least understood of all of these sort of approaches. And so I'm at this table because I want to provide data about prevention, what we're doing in the county prevention-wise. And I'd also like to find some partners who'd be willing to administer or participate in Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration approved evidence-based programs and implement those in their agencies with their clients because they're evidence-based and they are prevention programs rather than intervention programs or recovery programs. And I was a college professor and I taught literature. And one of my favorite books to teach to beginning teachers was The Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield. Holden Caulfield was narrating that story from a mental institution. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to save kids from falling off the cliff. He wanted to catch them before they fell. And, the kids I taught that book were like, wow, I had no idea. I thought Holden Caulfield was a hood. And no, it was about prevention, about prevention work and how important prevention work is. So that's why I'm here.
I love how you made that link from Catcher in the Rye to this table. That's great.
I have some deputies en route to your house, Denise. I know that book has been banned in many places, so we'll see you out of the jail in a little while.
They're over here on the sofa reading it, Joe. So if you need them.
How about Troy Serber?
I've always enjoyed working with folks and trying to find solutions to their problems. That's one of the things I liked of working on night shift. Sometimes you get to meet the runaway kid that's struggling and being able to work with those kids and their families. It's taken one person that I know, she's got a great job now at Safeway that had struggled since about 16. And I think she's like 31 now. And she's doing really well. And I like seeing that. And I worked hard back when she was in school. I wish I could have found different ways to help her be successful sooner. But I'm always hopeful that we just continue to work in concert with our community partners to help those that are in need to get the services they need to be successful. And it doesn't just start when they're 20. It doesn't start when they're 40. It starts, I think, when they're young. I really want to get help to kids when they're younger. And it's not just about keeping them off drugs. It's also getting the needs, their mental health needs met. So it's like a big package and it needs to start at all different levels. So.
Yes, it does. Thank you. How about Dunya Full?
Thanks so much. I'm Dunya. I'm the Director of Population Health here at the hospital, Jefferson Healthcare. And I'm going to pretty much steal exactly what Vicki said, which is we've now realized that the head is attached to the body. And I'm really excited to be representing healthcare at a time whenever this is so important and making sure that we're providing all that we can for our community and our patients.
Thanks, Dunya. Gabby? Gabby Cladell.
Yeah, I am Gabby Caudell. I'm the clinical supervisor of Believe in Recovery. I'm also the clinical supervisor of the residential substance abuse treatment program at the jail. And I'm at this table because you asked me to be here. And I just really have a heart for people with addiction. I've struggled with addiction in my past, and you know, it's something that is still very relevant today in my life, and hopefully I can make a difference somehow. And hopefully with this new jail program, I'm able to meet people where they're at and help them be successful for when they get out. So there you go.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Let's see. We have, how about James Kennedy?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm James Kennedy, Jefferson County Prosecuting Attorney, and I'm from home today, and my internet connection's been really bad, so if I cut out, I apologize. You know, I'm here because, you know, I want to be in a position where I can make a difference in my community and do something that will improve the lives of others. And I get to do that in many different ways, and you know, one of them is to send people to treatment and to monitor them and to see how they do. And one of the great joys of this job is actually seeing people succeed at that and really turn their lives around. And as many other people have mentioned, you know, this is also personal for me. I lost a good friend to addiction a couple of years ago. And as also the county coroner, you know, the cost of addiction is still something that we see now constantly. You know, the opioid epidemic, I think, has lost a lot of press coverage over the past couple of years, but it didn't go away. And so it's still a problem, and it's not just opioids.
Thanks, James. How about Beth Myers? Beth, I knew is she's the new MAC coordinator at Jefferson Healthcare.
Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Myers. And what brings me here today is my experience tells me that people do recover, and I am driven to be a part of that. And yeah, so I'm just in learning mode. I'm taking it all in and starting to percolate and apply some of the things I'm learning here. I really appreciate everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. It's good to have you here. Let's see. Jolene Cron.
Jolene Cron, Deputy Clinical Director with the Salish Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization. I joined late. I'm hearing that the prompt is why am I here?
Yeah.
So I'll go with that. I've been working in community behavioral health for over 25 years. Tremendous commitment to helping communities be better and people be healthier. And that's what brings me to this field. And the commitment of Jefferson County brings me to this specific table.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else I've missed? Commissioner Brotherton.
Yes. Thanks, Lori. Greg Brotherton, County Commissioner, and I think I'm representing the Board of Health on this group, and I really appreciate, as Vicki and others have said, the nexus of talent and effort and labor that's here. My kind of personal inspiration is Karel Trubak, an illegal immigrant from the Czech Republic, who was a really good friend of mine, the best musician who has condescended to play music with me, and a better man in every way that counts than I was, who struggled with substance use disorder and died 10 years ago. And I think about him often in this work.
Thank you. It's good to have you here. Let's try back with Matt.
Hi, yeah, thanks for coming back to me. I'm one of the hospital commissioners, and when I first ran for hospital commissioner, they had it in their bylaws that mental health and substance abuse were not considered medical conditions as far as the hospital district went. And so that has changed, and it was a big focus when I started, and I'm committed to try to, have a world where people have adequate healthcare of all sorts, housing, food. I'm just a crazy idealist, and I'm just honored to be a part of this group. Because this is and the CHIP process, I'm incredibly proud of and supportive of. I think it's really cutting edge. So this group gives me a great insight into an area that I deeply care about and is such a huge area of need. So thank you.
Well, we're glad you're here. I think Richard Davies might be our last one. Yes, Richard Davies.
All right, so I'm here. I'm a public defender. I'm also a member of our drug court. I'm here because addiction's been criminalized in this country. Changes are being made, but not near quick enough.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, so you know I usually drive us through those introductions in the first 8 minutes of the agenda. But this time I thought it was important to really remind ourselves why we're here. Because like a year ago when we had COVID just sort of slam itself in the middle of our table and we had to figure out what to do next, I think we have another, it's a big thing. I think we should admit it's a big thing. And I think there's going to be a range of ideas and conversation about it. And I'm glad that we have a table to have it at. I thought to lay the groundwork, we would start with James Kennedy giving us an overview of the new ruling that came down at the end of February on State versus Blake. And I've got some slides, so I'm going to switch over and share the screen. And then I'll have James Kennedy sort of start speaking to them. James, thanks for your patience while I get that set up.
Okay, so I'm going to give everyone kind of like a very brief, simplified version of state of our drug laws and State v. Blake. So as everyone knows, we have controlled substances out there, and those are what we commonly call drugs, and possessing them is illegal or was. And in the state of Washington, it was a Class C felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Now, as a practical matter, that is not how our sentences get determined. Those are merely the statutory caps or maximums. Our sentences in the state of Washington are determined by the Sentencing Reform Act, which in turn produced the Washington State Criminal Justice Commission or Sentencing Commission, sorry, who produces, they publish a manual every year, and their manual is what determines somewhat what someone gets sentenced to. And the general rule is that misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors, with a few exceptions, do not count on your offender score. Your offender score is determined by every felony that you have. And so each felony conviction is considered 1 point, and our scale is 0 to 9 points. It would take a minimum under our current guidelines to have 6 prior felony convictions, where before you would be looking at going to prison on a possession of a controlled substance. As a practical matter, though, that doesn't happen very often because we have other sentencing alternatives, such as things called a DOSA, which you get 2 within 10 years if you're up in that prison range. And so you'd have to have used both of your DOSAs and had that many prior felony convictions to be looking at prison time for a simple possession conviction. The Department of Corrections has identified that of the, I think it's around 17,000 prisoners that they have in their custody, less than 100 were imprisoned on a simple possession conviction. So it's something that we deprioritized about 15, 16 years ago, I think, in the state of Washington for sentencing, and that largely is reflected by the current population. Can you go to the next slide, please? So a crime, one of the components of something that is a crime is something that attorneys call mens rea. And what it refers to is the mental state of the crime. So that could be doing something intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or negligently, and we also have two kinds of negligence: simple negligence and criminal negligence, right? So it's not just a matter of doing something, but you also, generally speaking, have to intend to do it or do it knowingly or so on and so forth, right? Crimes that don't have that, can you go back to that slide you were just on?
Have I got it right?
No, what was the one right after the, okay, yeah, sorry. That's right, we're on this one, apologize. So crimes that don't have the mental state requirement are called strict liability offenses. You don't have to mean to do it. You don't have to purposefully do it or even be aware of it. If you're doing it, you're guilty of it. And we do have a number of offenses like that, but the common law tradition from which we legally descend from generally frowns upon strict liability offenses, and most of the ones that we have are not felonies. Most of them would be misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors. A good example would be like driving under the influence, right? You don't have to intend to do it or even be aware that you're doing it, although I would argue that most people who do are aware. But if you're driving drunk, that's it. No one cares whether you meant to do it or not. And the same is true for possession of a controlled substance. The big difference is that possession of a controlled substance is a felony, whereas driving under the influence is a gross misdemeanor. And our Supreme Court held that that is too serious of a punishment for a strict liability offense. And for that matter, and because of that, they held that the law was unconstitutional, as in violating our state constitution and the federal constitution. All right, so next slide. So what that means is that possession of a controlled substance is not a criminal offense anymore. One moment. So what happened is RCW 69-4013. It's actually, it used to be a simple statute, and it got pretty lengthy after several modifications, including I-502, which legalized marijuana, has essentially been zeroed out in its entirety. We just kind of treat it now like it doesn't exist anymore. So that means if a law enforcement officer sees drugs in the field, that's not an offense. It's also not probable cause. It's not, it can't be used to generate a request for a search warrant or any other further law enforcement action, generally speaking, based on that. And this is the type of thing where Richard Davies and I would spend a lot of time in court is arguing over things like search warrants and whether the search was proper based on drugs, because it wouldn't be uncommon that in searching a car for the drugs that were found that we might find additional stolen property, firearms, other contraband, and then we go back to the warrant and the probable cause, and did the officer exceed the scope of the Constitution and whatnot. So that's all basically just kind of gone away. It's not probable cause to do anything now. Next slide. So what we did when this, or the prosecutor's office did once this decision came down, is we wanted to make sure that no one was being held in jail for a simple possession offense. And we didn't have very many. I think it was only 2. And so we dismissed those cases so they'd be released. We are still in the process of dismissing all of our pending simple possession cases. I think we're mostly, mostly done with that, but we're still going through it. We're in the process of preparing to vacate judgments, vacate old past convictions. And people who are, requesting that at the top of the list are people who are serving time in prison. So like I said before, if you've got a prior possession of a controlled substance conviction, that's factoring into your offender score, even if the crime that you're in prison for has nothing to do with drugs. So if you're in prison for a burglary, a murder, a rape, whatever, if you have a possession of a controlled substance prior conviction, that's factoring into the sentence you're currently serving. And I'm going to go ahead and just make the assumption that possession of a controlled substance is the most commonly prosecuted and felony in the state of Washington, meaning that most of the people who are serving in prison, time in prison, probably have at least one prior possession of a controlled substance conviction. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to vacate those convictions that are on people's records and then recalculate their offense or their sentencing range without that time in there, and then resentence them. Now, that's kind of a simplified version. It could get a lot more complicated than that because if you have, for example, if you're on community custody, which is our Department of Corrections version of probation, that's also an additional point on your offender score. So if you commit possession of a controlled substance and you have that point, and then you're also in community custody, and then you commit a new felony and you go to prison, well, then you're going to be recalculated to take 2 points off of your offender score. If you were committing an offense, possession of a controlled substance, and while your criminal charge was pending, you skipped court, and now you have a felony bail jumping charge too. And then let's say you made a deal with the prosecutor, drop the possession of a controlled substance conviction, plead guilty to the bail jump, which a lot of people would do because there's no community custody tied to it. So they would get out of having to be on probation, basically. So that wasn't uncommon. So now you're in prison for that bail jump, or that bail jump's factoring into your offender score. Does that come out too because it was predicated on a charge that our Supreme Court held unconstitutional? We don't know. So there's lots of questions there that we don't have answers to yet. And yeah, eventually, we're going to have to work our way back in time down to probably the 70s. And so with drug court, we have largely dismissed most of those cases. We have a couple of people on tomorrow who are going to have their cases dismissed. We had 2 last week. They're opting out, as is their, they have that option now. And so, they say to us that they're going to engage with treatment still. I hope that they do. I'm a little skeptical because facing charges is a great motivator, as we've seen, to get people involved with treatment. And we're also going to stop collecting LFOs for anyone who has a pending case that they would be, or excuse me, an old conviction that they're paying the legal financial obligations on. We've already talked to our county clerk about that. Any payments that still come in are going to be held in suspense until such time as they can be refunded. And and dealing with the motions to vacate. And Richard has already been very busy by sending those to my desk. Next slide.
That's what I have.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, I can attempt to answer them, but I will tell you there is a lot we don't know. There are things that I have just said that may not end up being true, and there are other things that may end up being very true that I haven't said because I'm not aware of them yet.
Sheriff Knoll, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, seeing it all laid out like that on a PowerPoint, whose responsibility is it for reviewing the case as an offender score? That maybe you just said that by saying Richard's putting motions on your desk. If the inmate doesn't have they're in prison, is someone working on their behalf, or is the prosecutor obligated to review all the cases they've filed, or I don't know how that would work? Or
so I don't know entirely. DOC has to be working with us on this. I just got a letter in the mail 2 days ago from someone who's in prison. She's not in prison on a possession of a controlled substance charge, but she has a possession of a controlled substance conviction from 10 years ago that she's asking my office to vacate so that she can be resentenced on her current charge, which is, it's a property offense. I know that, but I don't know which one. And so Right now, people are going to have to contact my office to get that done. And, we're going to need to work with DOC on people who are currently in custody. And that's where it's going to be right now. I don't know where it's going to be after that. I don't think that we have lists right now that we're looking at generated by DOC. I don't know how accurate those lists are. They've sent us previous lists of inmates like last year when they were started doing a lot of early releases for COVID. They would send out lists of everyone they were looking at. And I know from that there was a lot of inaccuracies there. So we're just getting started from this. My office is drinking from a fire hose at the moment, multiple fire hoses. And so we're just still processing and figuring this out.
Thank you. So this is a conversation we're clearly just barely going to open today, and I can see us taking it to the next meeting, certainly. But I know that this ruling impacts a lot of the services and how we connect with our clients. And I would like to hear just in these last, let's give it about 8 minutes. What impacts are you guys seeing for yourselves, for your agency as a result of this ruling? And I'm looking for does anybody want to raise their hand? Richard Davies?
All right, so the impact for the public defender's office is pretty immediate. There are those people we presently represent, cases being dismissed by the prosecutor, then other cases that clients are coming to me asking that their cases be dismissed. And then people we've got, a long time relationship with. Why? Because they're suffering from addiction, who are looking to vacate those felony convictions. I've got a fellow on the calendar tomorrow who wants to vacate 6 possession charges, and he owes the state $30,000. And so you might imagine how desperate and hopeless he's felt for years and years and years, being under that rock imposed by the criminal justice system. So that the trouble is that the county pays our office to represent people facing jail time. These people aren't facing jail time. They're looking to get out from under convictions that they probably did jail time for. But I don't believe the county has an obligation to pay us to help those people get out from under those felony convictions. And it's not just, about the amount of money that you owe. It's all of the collateral consequences. It's housing, it's jobs that you can't get because they check your criminal history and there's 1 or 2 felonies as a result of an addiction. So it's going to have a huge impact here, and we're just doing what we can. It's like James says, it's a fire hose, and we're just trying to, at this point, do all we can as fast as we can for people that need it.
Thank you. Ford, are you seeing any impacts?
Yeah, we're seeing impacts. Nobody wakes up one morning and says, "Oh, geez, the sun's shining, the birds are singing. I think I'll go to treatment." Most of the people that come to treatment are driven there by law enforcement, the court, their wives, whatever. They have some driving force that drives them into treatment. With the vacation of these sentences, we have people in drug court that are being released from that obligation, and some of them are some of the sickest people that are on the street right now, and they're no longer going to be required to be in court. They're not going to be required to do treatment, and they're going to go right back to the lifestyle that they had when they came in. And that is not just drug court. That's other individuals that are currently in treatment that are faced with the same situation. So yeah, it's affecting us because the people that were getting treatment have now found an excuse not. So
are there any questions that you folks are asking within your organizations, that you're asking each other as you look at how this is changing, how you're connecting with the folks that are your clients.
Yeah, so one thing we're trying to figure out is how many people may be released from incarceration as a result of this. But, you know, as Kennedy, you know, eloquently put, typically people have other charges that are keeping them. So I don't know that the floodgates will be opened. Nonetheless, it is going to mean right at the time that we're dealing with COVID and eviction issues with that, we simultaneously potentially have people, you know, coming out of prison, and a lot of people who are going to struggle to understand how do they get these things off their record, right? So as they come up, or we try and get approved for a subsidy or a landlord, how do we get those things, you know, taken off there? And then looking at, you know, dollars from the legislator and advocating that, you know, money be set aside to be able to help deal with these matters. So, you know, places like Northwest Justice Project are going to need a lot of money, public defenders, those of us that'll do pro bono work. But, you know, there's, you know, recording fees and the other issues, but there's also people that did pay money. You know, we don't know if those people are going to have to get that money back. I mean, this could be really big for counties and some of the cities. I mean, I hate to say it because, yeah, it is getting money off the backs of poor people often. But that's where a lot of, you know, money often came from. And if some of this money is going to have to be paid back, this could be catastrophic. I mean, yeah.
Thanks, Jared. So is there anybody else? Thought I saw a hand and then I don't know where I saw it.
Yeah, Lori, this is Lisa. I just wanted to say real quickly, the team at ADAI was coordinating with the state to make sure that we could get naloxone out into the communities quickly for people who were being released from incarceration and not having warm handoffs to providers who could provide them with that naloxone. So that was another concern.
Thank you. So our next question had to do with looking at it from the lens of this consortium, which is all about connecting people to behavioral health services. And with the change that has happened on the landscape, I think as a collective, it's time to look at how outside of the criminal justice system, how do we get people into behavioral health treatment? And I think we have just a few more minutes that we can talk about it here, but I wanted to set the stage so that I could send out a survey, and any idea, no idea is too small or too dumb or too wide flung. I'd like to get some ideas sent in via that survey that will then base the conversation of how are we going to connect people to services in the absence of the criminal justice system, which has been the way that we were connecting pretty substantially up until now. So if anybody wanted to start that brainstorm, I have a couple of questions here that were just quick brainstorms. How many people have come into the treatment without a court order? Patrick?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at doing is really ramping up our outreach efforts. We're a small, fairly modest NAMI affiliate here, but we do offer some programs, support groups, as many of you know, and also our family to family course, which is for family members and others. That's beginning actually on the 20th, and we still have room for a few more people if they want to enroll in that. But somebody just mentioned warm handoffs, and I think that from NAMI's point of view, the best thing that we can do is try to connect people with our services. But to do that, we need to make ourselves more visible in the community. And I think one of the things that we do is offer a safe place for people to be. And Ford and others can talk about that better than I can. But in some ways, what we're doing is going from a negative incentive to a positive incentive. And I don't know the mechanics of facilitating that in some way. When people are in the midst, as we all know, of an addiction of one form or another, or if they're in the midst of a mental illness episode, it's not the best decision-making time for them. So I think persistence, increased awareness, and then I was delighted to hear what Jim's saying about the Community Development Block Grant, providing portals for people to enter into the community in terms of housing, jobs, and all of those sorts of things, the things that we've been doing, but trying to do everything we can with limited resources. A lot of the challenges aren't going to go away. They're just going to be perhaps exponentially increased by this ruling, which I think on the whole is a positive one, but absent the required part of it, it's going to be a real challenge. But at the same time, it could also turn into an opportunity for us.
Dave Fortino.
So one of the things I don't often book people for, probably never have, is someone just being mentally ill or being addicted to substances. There's always a crime attached to that.
Yeah.
And this court ruling has removed one of those charges, but we're still going to get people in jails and in the criminal justice system with mental illness and substance abuse. And so there's already a lot of these structures put in place, behavioral health court, drug court, that are really well equipped to handle a lot of these things. One thing I would hate to see is that funding for those things go away, because suddenly people think, well, we're just not going to be booking people that have these issues any longer, and they don't need the support any longer, because they certainly will. I think it just changes how we approach it as a community to some degree. Certainly it's going to change how the lawyers and the officers engage those individuals in the community, but I don't think we should by any means tear down the supports that are already in place. Look at engaging in some other areas that we can, but I think it's still important to reinforce those supports that are there.
Thank you. Okay, I know we're nearing our 4 o'clock time point. I will send out a survey looking for input as to, I think that our strategic plan is going to need an update in the face of what we have going on here with this ruling. And so just to sort of whet the conversation, if you folks have ideas that you'd like to respond in that survey with, we'll bring those then to the next meeting and we'll start a conversation around, okay, so how can we be proactive about this? How can we have ideas sort of percolating so that if money starts to let loose from state or federal levels, that we can attach to new approaches? You know, how are we set to go after that money quickly and bring it into our community? Are there any last thoughts before I let everyone go? All right, then. Thank you all for coming today. We'll see you next week, or next month, I'm sorry, and have a great week.
Oops.